There is a couple of things to go over today, starting off with a big performance boost that will be making its way to the Xbox Series S. This article comes from The Verge and it reads, Microsoft gives Xbox Series S devs more memory to improve graphics performance. As most know, the Xbox Series S is a more than capable console. Although it might not be capable of hitting the performance targets of the Xbox Series X, it is still more than powerful enough to run games at a decent resolution. Xbox is advertising the Series S as a 1440p 120 frame machine, and although it is clearly not the case, especially with newer AAA games, it can still definitely hold its own in the 1080p department even at more than 60 frames. In the article they say Microsoft is giving the Xbox Series S game developers more control over memory on the console. The new Xbox software development kit has been released to developers recently, and it frees up more memory for developers to access for Xbox Series S games and boost performance in certain titles. Hundreds of additional megabytes of memory are now available to Xbox Series S developers, says Microsoft game dev team in a video detailing the updates. This gives developers more control over memory, which can improve graphic performance in memory constrained conditions. Again, this is something that developers have also called for quite some time now. It is even pointed out by Digital Foundry a while ago that this memory issue has been plaguing the Series S when it comes to performance. The Verge says here those memory constraints have been detailed by Digital Foundry, with developers reportedly feeling the pain around optimizing games for the Series S. It is less the CPU and GPU power of the Xbox Series S, particularly as the Series S has the same CPU as the X but a more memory situation. Microsoft improvements, although small, could help reduce some of the friction around developing games for the Xbox Series S. Now, based on a few things that I have read, it seems to be a developmental nightmare to optimize games for both the Xbox Series S and the Xbox Series X at once, since both these consoles do come out together as current generation. And now I also understand why Microsoft would want to make some of these changes to ensure that developers can have a much easier time developing games for both consoles. Although this issue seems not to be present in the Xbox Series X, it is still a problem that is present for the Xbox Series S and something that needs to be sorted out. Right now, the Xbox Series S seems to be a very popular option with the more casual gaming fan base. It is also perfect for those who do not want to do disc-based gaming, and considering that digital sales are about 70% of the market, the smaller console fits in perfectly. On top of that, Xbox is also working on a way for you to buy physical discs and activate them and play them on the Xbox Series S, so there will be even more of an appeal for this console. It is understandable why Xbox would want to make these changes and help out developers. As they move more into the digital side of things, these discless consoles will become even more important. Sony themselves have a digital version of the PlayStation 5, and although Xbox went in a slightly different route by offering not the discless version of the Xbox Series X but rather a cheaper console price at $299, it has been a winner for them. Kotaku in their article also says while it is not the most powerful console out there, the smaller and more affordable Xbox Series S has been a big hit for Xbox, but reportedly some devs has felt the strain of getting bigger, more advanced games to work on console, and in response Microsoft is freeing up some memory to help improve the tiny console performance. And again, to be clear, the Series S is not going to turn into a 4K machine, but it will maybe help to smooth out some of the frame rates that will result in overall better gameplay, and it's something that the article also points out. This isn't like Microsoft quadrupling the power of the Series S, nor is this Microsoft flipping on some secret switch to let the console consoles start running games at 8K and 240Hz or anything wild like that. Instead, the amount of memory dedicated to non-gaming functions in this $300 Series S is being tweaked. While the more powerful Xbox Series X console has 16GB of RAM, the cheaper Xbox Series S only has 10GB. But before this update, devs only had access to 8GB of memory, as Microsoft reserves around 2GB for the console's operating system. Now devs will have hundreds of extra megabytes of memory, which could help some games run a bit better moving forward, and hopefully this will lead to better optimized games that not only looks better but also runs better. But then I want to move on and talk about a more serious topic. The back and forth between Sony and Microsoft has been ongoing for a while now, as pressure is mounting on PlayStation with these major acquisitions that Xbox is doing. As such, some serious claims are being made. Coming to us from The Verge, Microsoft claims that Sony pays for blocking rights to keep games off of Xbox Game Pass. Now, I don't think that this story is as black and white as it might look, but it is still interesting nonetheless. They start off here saying Microsoft has claimed Sony pays for blocking rights to stop developers from adding their content to Xbox Game Pass. The explosive claims are part of documents filed with Brazil's national competition regulator and part of a review of Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard. Microsoft's ability to continue expanding Game Pass have been hampered by Sony's desire to inhabit such growth, claims Microsoft in an August 9 filing to the Administrative Council of Economic Defense as translated from Portuguese. Sony pays for blocking rights to prevent developers from adding content to Xbox Game Pass and other competing subscription services. Now, it should be noted that paying for exclusivity is not that uncommon. Although Xbox is making this claim, Sony could also just be paying for games to be exclusive to their platform instead of Game Pass. It is not that uncommon. Although I'm not a fan of these type of practices, it is something that all of them engage in, and this is also something that The Verge point out themselves. Does this mean Sony is evil and Microsoft is casually out here revealing some drastically business practices? The reality is likely a little more complicated on both sides. Sony could simply be paying for exclusive rights for its own streaming services, or it may have clauses in some publishing contracts that prevent some games it publishes from being published on rival subscription services. It is not clear exactly what Microsoft is referring to here, but contracts from publishing games can be complex, particularly when rights of streaming and subscription services are involved. Documents filed in the Epic vs Apple trial last year revealed that Microsoft had been considering lowering the revenue split for PC games in exchange for the grant of streaming rights to Microsoft. Now, it seems that there is a bit of back and forth between these two companies. A few weeks ago, we heard that Sony has been trying to block the Activision Blizzard acquisition, or at least speaking out against it by claiming that titles from Activision like Call of Duty are something that cannot be replicated and therefore it is anti-consumer for Xbox to own it. More documents from Brazilian CADE have been analyzed by Xbox and PlayStation fans over the past week, with posters on Reset Era highlighting the juicy parts. The regulator have been asking Sony and other Microsoft rivals about the Activision Blizzard acquisition. Sony previously responded to Brazil's regulator claiming that it could be difficult for other developers to create a franchise that rival Activision's Call of Duty and that it stands out as a gaming category on its own. Naturally, Microsoft disagrees, and Ubisoft, Riot Games, Bungie, Namco and Google have all highlighted competition to Call of Duty in the form of Apex Legends, Battlefield, PUBG and more. Now, it definitely seems that there is a bit of worry from Sony here and what it could mean for them. It is clear that Microsoft means business here and the whole gaming world is watching. Microsoft did have a few more things to say though. though. In the article they say here, considering that exclusivity strategies has been at the core of Sony's strategy to strengthen its presence in the gaming industry and that Sony is the leader in the distribution of digital games, Sony's concern with possible exclusivity of Activision content is incoherent to say the least, Microsoft said. Indeed, Microsoft's ability to continue expanding Game Pass has been obstructed by Sony's desire to inhabit such growth. Sony pays for blocking rights to prevent developers from adding content to Game Pass and other competing subscription services. Sony does not want attractive subscription services to threaten its dominance in the digital distribution market for consoles, Microsoft continues in the filing. In other words, Sony rails against the introduction of new monetization models capable of challenging its own business model. And to sum that up, Microsoft is suggesting here that Sony has enjoyed market dominance following their own business model of selling consoles and then making exclusive AAA games that sell at $60 each. It has been an incredible successful model for them, but all of that can now be in trouble. With Microsoft buying big studios and bringing their content to Xbox Game Pass, even if it is not exclusive, can threaten Sony's traditional model that they have been using for years. Sony has been paying for exclusive rights for many years now, so people do think though that it is a little bit hypocritical of them to say all of these things. It also sounds that Sony might not be that worried about anti-competitiveness, but rather just what it means for their own bottom line, which is completely understandable. They work really hard for many years to establish themselves, and I'm sure they don't want things to change up now. As for me, I'm obviously not a fan of exclusivity. I've never celebrated gamers not having access to games, and I never understand others who would. If you are a fan of gaming, you would want as many people as possible to play all of these great games, and I do hope that Xbox honors the agreement and continues to make Call of Duty multi-platform just like they did with Minecraft. I also hope that they do the same with the other games as well. I was even hoping that Starfield would be multi-platform, but with that said though, I'm also not going to cry myself to sleep over it. As a person who has missed out on lots of PlayStation games since I only have an Xbox, I can understand the frustration. I really wanted to play God of War, Last of Us, and I was super hyped for Final Fantasy VII Remake until I heard that Sony was paying for the game to be exclusive. In those cases, I had to put on my big boy pants and get over it, and unfortunately those who only have a PlayStation and not Xbox will have to do the same. This whole deal with Activision Blizzard is all about the vision that Xbox has for the future of gaming. It is no secret that Xbox right now is going very hard when it comes to Xbox Game Pass. By buying companies like Activision and Bethesda, they can ensure that they have first-party content. The problem that has always been there when it comes to these type of services and licensing is that sometimes publishers can pull their rights. Since Xbox calls itself the Netflix of gaming, we can use them as a pretty good example. There has been a time when the content lineup for Netflix has been much stronger. They had a bunch of awesome licenses and then a bunch of other players entered the game. Amazon, Hulu, Disney, HBO, Paramount and plenty more. Licenses then got pulled to go over to competing platforms, and just like that you are left with nothing. That is a very good reason why Netflix is now focusing on developing its own content, and Xbox is doing the same. They do not want to rely on third-party deals because they know that publishers like EA and Ubisoft are also competing in the same space and can at any time pull their games. By buying studios like Blizzard and Bethesda, they can ensure that those licenses never get pulled. Xbox is also heavily invested in cloud gaming. Although they might say that they have no plans to replace consoles, we both know that this is going to come sooner rather than later. Cloud gaming for Xbox is directly linked to Xbox Game Pass, and that is the whole point. In order to access cloud gaming, you need Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. As Xbox expands its service, we will see see Game Pass expand with it. A big driving force behind this is mobile. I read somewhere that a massive portion of Blizzard's sales come from mobile, and they are not the only ones. Call of Duty, Minecraft, Fortnite and plenty of others has made that shift. Xbox is heavily invested in cloud gaming and also mobile, and once their digital Xbox app or virtual console is up, we will see Game Pass expand heavily. The mobile market is massive, not just in terms of people but also in terms of revenue. Getting these people to pay $15 for a service like Game Pass is not going to be that hard. Another thing that I am finding very interesting here, and I know that I'm going a little bit off topic, is how the console landscape will look under cloud gaming, especially with what Xbox is doing. At this point we know that a massive part of the gaming industry is relying on Xbox and PlayStation. Ubisoft, Rockstar and whoever there is need a platform to sell their games. Their success is directly linked to these consoles. Although gaming existed before Xbox and PlayStation and the PC market is huge, there is no denying that Xbox and PlayStation are responsible for a big portion of that. If Xbox, who probably controls I would say 30% of the market, decides to switch over to cloud gaming, normal developers will be forced to switch over with them and optimize their games accordingly. If they don't, they will lose out. Now you can argue, and so will Xbox, but with the way that they are buying studios and making money, soon it will not even matter anymore. I think we will see these publishers following them into cloud gaming optimization soon. The console landscape is drastically changing, and with it, major platforms aka Sony and Microsoft needs to change with it or potentially be left behind. Here is the actual reality. Xbox and PlayStation are blockbuster. Now let me just make this point for the millionth time. There used to be a box underneath your TV that was needed in order to watch movies. It was a VHS or a DVD or a Blu-ray player. Then streaming took over and everyone who made money selling discs quickly ran out of business. Consoles are following that same path. With cloud gaming on the rise, there will soon be no reason for us to need a console anymore. I see that happening in the next 10 years, and honestly it could even be sooner. For the last 25 years ago on Xbox and PlayStation, platformers and publishers have worked together hand in hand. Both needed each other and their success were linked. Ubisoft or Rockstar, whoever there is, can make the best game in the world, but if they do not have a platform for the games to be played on, it does not really mean anything. That is where Xbox and PlayStation comes in. The more consoles they sell, the more opportunity there is for developers to potentially have their games in the hands of gamers. The catch here is though that these publishers need to give 30% of their profits to these platforms, but it is a small price to pay and everyone is making a lot of money. However, no one wants to pay that $30, but there is no other option yet. Once cloud gaming becomes more available, there will be no reason for Activision to release their game on Xbox and PlayStation if they can just tell people to go to the App Store, download their launcher and play the games through the cloud. And just like that, Xbox and PlayStation are no longer making 30% and their whole business model is done. Xbox knows this and they know that this future is coming and they want to protect themselves from that. Many are saying that Xbox is creating this future, but the truth is that cloud gaming was not invented by Microsoft and it will happen with or without them. They are just following the market and trying to get ahead of it. They know that there is going to come a time when developers no longer need them and they want to revamp themselves as a service instead of just a platform. By securing first-party content and linking the cloud to Xbox Game Pass, they are ensuring a future for themselves when cloud gaming inevitably takes over. Sony rightfully is worried about this future as well. The problem is that they are blaming Xbox for that. Whether Microsoft buys Activision Blizzard or not is not going to change anything. Activision does not want to hand over 30% of their profits, and if they can release their games through the cloud using their own launcher, they are definitely going to to see that. We are already seeing that happening on PC. Many publishers do not want to hand over their profits to Steam, and they are just creating their own PC launcher so that they can hold on to as much money as they possibly can, and on console it will be no different. There will always be some publishers who do not want to go through the hassle or might not have the audience to do their own thing, and they will still need a bigger platform. Once again, that is where Xbox comes in. By having a massive service like Game Pass, developers will still use them to get more eyes on themselves. It is the Steam effect. Any publisher can create their own launcher, but many still chooses to use Steam. On console, it will also be the same if you have enough eyes on you. Microsoft seems to be planning for this inevitable future by securing first-party titles and also working hard to create a game service that people will want to subscribe to. Right now, it doesn't seem that Sony has anything planned for this future. I think they are big enough to adapt, but they also need to start properly working on this right now. They might have the best AAA games out there and sell them on consoles, but the majority of their profits, or at least a very large portion of it, does come from the percentages that they take from third-party sales. The moment that goes away, so does Sony and Xbox for that matter, and that is why they need to plan for it. For Microsoft, their plan is clear: the Netflix of gaming and creating their own cloud launcher. PlayStation's plan right now seems to be blaming Xbox. It does make you wonder where all of this will leave Sony in the future. Although they are also investing in subscriptions and cloud gaming, it does not seem to be part of their core business model the way that it is with Xbox. As such, you could see them fall heavily behind eventually. Now, I am a massive fan of the traditional system and the way that Sony is doing things. I think that the market is big enough for everyone to exist and still make billions of dollars, but cloud gaming is starting to slowly but surely change all of that. Nintendo will be fine doing their own thing, and I think so will PC, but Xbox and PlayStation, those two consoles will be very interesting, and seeing how things will shape for them in the future. There is obviously no guarantee that this whole Xbox Game Pass thing or even cloud gaming will work, but I think we are definitely heading in that direction. There are a few things that we do know right now. Xbox Game Pass has 25 million paying members. They are heavily invested in Xbox Game Pass and also cloud gaming. They are pushing out streaming devices and streaming apps, and with it, I think that it is clear what the business model is going to be going forward. So with Sony claiming that the acquisition of Activision Blizzard by Microsoft can lead to anti-competitiveness, Xbox for their part did not take that lying down. In fact, they came out pretty aggressively against it and made a few points that I thought were good and a few that I thought were not. Microsoft claims that by adding Activision Blizzard content to Xbox Game Pass will actually increase competition somehow. The inclusion of Activision Blizzard content in Xbox Game Pass does not impair the ability of other players to compete in the digital gaming distribution market, claimed Microsoft in one document, where the company also argues that it can increase the competition thanks to high quality content at lower immediate cost. Now, one thing that I will definitely say here is the fact that it will definitely bring prices down. By Xbox making things cheaper, it will force others to do the same. I know that there are some who will say that doing this by Microsoft is going to mean that it could lead to other developers losing profits, and as such the quality of games will be dropping, but I do think that that is a crazy take. These developers like EA and Rockstar and Sony makes billions. A fraction of that actually goes into game development. These companies have screwed all of us over the years with massive microtransactions, loot boxes and deluxe versions of their games that cost $200. By forcing them to lower their prices and stop these practices, in my opinion, is nothing but positives. The article also states Microsoft also argues that not distributing games like Call of Duty at rival console stores would simply not be profitable for the company. Microsoft has previously made it clear that it will will keep Call of Duty on PlayStation. Microsoft says that the strategy of not distributing Activision Blizzard games on rival consoles would only be profitable if the game could attract a high number of players over to the Xbox ecosystem, resulting in revenue to compensate for losses from not selling these titles on rival consoles. But at the end of the day, all of this does circle back once again and tie into cloud gaming and also Xbox Game Pass. As I have stated, Xbox is working on a very real strategy here and trying to break away from normal game sales in favor of subscriptions, and one analyst per Game Rant has a very interesting prediction about where all of this can lead. The past decade has seen Microsoft move away from the classic console gaming strategy of providing exclusive games in favor of promoting its Xbox Game Pass subscription service. Xbox Game Pass has been touted as the Netflix for video games, and it seems that Microsoft's ultimate goal for the service is to bring it in as many platforms as possible. In fact, Microsoft is even trying to make Xbox Game Pass available to those who do not have a console or PC at all, as evidenced by the aggressive cloud gaming efforts. And again, all of this ties back to what I said earlier. Microsoft is changing the way that games are being sold, and it will eventually lead to some interesting changes for the gaming space as a whole. There is always going to be a way to buy games for those who do not want to make use of this monthly type of commitment, but services is going to be the most affordable way of doing things. The article does continue here. Besides making Xbox Game Pass as easily accessible as possible, Microsoft has also made it a must buy for anyone who owns an Xbox console. Xbox Game Pass receives new games on a regular basis, including brand new day one releases that makes it practically pay for itself. It seems that the sky is the limit for Xbox Game Pass, and one analyst thinks that the service will explode in popularity once the major acquisitions go through. Now, this is something that I agree with, and judging by how hard Sony is working to block this deal, it seems that they must be feeling the exact same way. Analyst Michael Patcher believes that the combination of Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard and the cloud gaming, making Xbox Game Pass available to anyone with a screen handy, will make the service subscriber count grow exponentially. Speaking to Yahoo Finance, Patcher predicted that the number of Xbox Game Pass subscribers could potentially balloon from roughly 25 million it has now to a staggering 100 million. And once again, I touched on this earlier, but that is exactly the plan here, and I can definitely see Xbox pulling off those type of numbers once cloud gaming are more readily available. Right now, there are still drawbacks to cloud gaming, and that is the fact that not everyone has the internet speed for it, but once Xbox has released the app worldwide, the numbers for Xbox will grow exponentially. Xbox also right now does have enough first-party support to sustain the service, but they will also be heavily dependent on the Activision Blizzard deal to go through. The article does go on to say here, this might seem like an unobtainable goal on the service, but Patcher points out that the potential market for Xbox Game Pass is going to be over 3 billion people after cloud gaming really takes off. Anyone with access to a phone will be able to sign up for Xbox Game Pass and play it through Xbox cloud gaming services, and by completely eliminating the need for a console or PC, Game Pass significantly increases the number of potential subscribers. Now, that last part is a little bit off. Like I mentioned, the issue is not accessing, the issue is internet speed. I might have a phone, I might have Game Pass, but that does not mean that I can play games on the cloud. I don't think that their market is 3 billion strong, but I definitely think that it will be a lot bigger than it is now, and it is something that this article also points out. However, it is unclear exactly when this will happen. Cloud gaming is not nearly at the point where it is viable, attractive to traditional gaming on console or PC. While Game Pass cloud gaming functionality has earned some praise, it can't quite match up to playing a game that is downloaded on one's console. There is definitely a need for some major improvements to cloud gaming experience before it will be appealing to a massive audience, but once that technology gets here, it is easy to see how Xbox Game Pass will be an attractive option. Most hardcore gamers will always opt for the traditional method of playing due to the higher resolutions, but it is also worth pointing out that most people are not hardcore gamers. That is evident by how many people play mobile games. By tapping into that market, it is definitely going to be a huge advantage for any platform or developer who chooses to make use of it. One thing is clear though, and that is the fact that the gaming landscape over the next 10 years will look drastically different than it looks today.